All right, good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. It's 7:01, so I like to be prompt and like to be respectful of our two candidates here for the Peoria County Sheriff's Forum. My name is Brad McMillan, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Institute for Principal Leadership and Public Service here at Bradley University. I just want to set some ground rules for tonight and kind of give you an idea of how this will play out. Hopefully you were given index cards that you can fill out questions on, and what we would like is for you to put your name on those questions, and then if you're a Bradley student, we'd like you to put that you're a Bradley student. And I know sometimes Bradley students are bashful, but this is really a time for you to ask questions of these two candidates. We've done a really good job of registering a lot of Bradley students to vote on campus this year. And so you actually have some live registered voters here. We actually have a voter registration table outside. It's too late to register to vote in person, but you can still register to vote online through October 21st. And so they have the computers set up out there, and you can get online and get registered to vote. You also need to understand, I really want the Bradley students to listen to me on this, you can actually go into your polling place on election day, and if you're not registered to vote, if you bring 2 forms of ID, you can get registered to vote on election day and vote. So it's not too late to participate in this election if you want to. So the format for tonight is we're going to have opening statements from each candidate that will be 3 minutes in length. And then our moderator has some prepared questions that he's going to kick us off with. But then what we want to do is we want you to fill out your questions on the index cards. And then we have students in the audience that will come and pick those up and bring them down to the moderator. The one thing that we don't want, if we can avoid, is we don't want either family members or campaign folks to be asking the questions. This is really a time for the Bradley students and for the Bradley residents that we've invited from the local neighborhoods to ask questions that they have of these two candidates. Now you need to understand, Bradley students, this is a big deal. There hasn't been an open Peoria County Sheriff's race for a very long time. We're fortunate in the fact that we have two candidates that both have significant law enforcement experience. But they have different ideas, they have different positions on issues, and that's what we're here today, is to find out from them how they would lead the Sheriff's Office moving forward. The furthest to my left is Brian Asbell. He has served for 23 years in the Peoria County Sheriff's Department and was appointed as sheriff by the Peoria County Board in 2017. Right next to me, we have Brian Fengel, who has served as the Bartonville Police Chief for the past 21 years. Both candidates are well-respected local and statewide, even national law enforcement people. And I'm not going to go into greater detail because they're here to explain for themselves their background and experiences and why they believe they're the best candidate for the job. So I'm really happy tonight that my good friend Shelly Epstein has come back to Bradley University to help moderate this. Shelly has 33 years of journalism experience with the Peoria Journal-Star. 16 of those years, he served as the opinion editor of the Journal-Star, and in that role, he interviewed lots of candidates, and I know that because I used to go in and with my former boss, Ray LaHood, and be grilled by Shelly Epstein. He's always fair, but he always was very specific with the questions that he asked the congressman. And then, most recently, he has served as the Vice President for Communications at Bradley before he recently retired. So let's give a warm welcome to Shelly Epstein, and I'm going to turn it over to him.
Before we did anything. So as I was sitting here, was wondering, why would Bradley students be interested in the sheriff's race? And here's the reason. When I worked at Bradley, one of my duties was I was an advisor to a fraternity. And one night I got a call about 3 o'clock in the morning, one of the fraternity guys needed to be bailed out of the jail, and that was up to me. So you want the jail that these guys supervise to be accommodating and welcoming when you show up there. So, before we begin, as Brad said, we're going to try to make this informal as possible, gentlemen. And but I will forewarn you that I may ask for specifics, and that may be after your answer or during your answer. But we want as specific answers as we can so that these folks can make a judgment on where they're going to go. To decide who goes first, we scientifically flipped a coin, and Mr. Fengel won the coin flip, and so he gets the first question. Oh no, you have an opening statement. You have an opening statement, 3 minutes.
Will this be good for you guys if I stand up?
Yeah.
Okay. How's everybody doing tonight? Just like to thank everybody for coming. It's a very important time to be out and getting out to vote. I'd like to thank Brad McMillan and Bradley, the moderator, for hosting us. My name's Brian Fengel. Currently, I'm the police chief in Bartonville, which Bartonville has a dispatch center. We're backup for Peoria City and Peoria County. I've been in law enforcement for 30 years. I've been in Bartonville for 28 years. I've been the police chief for 21 years. Being safe and secure is one of the reasons I'm running for sheriff in our communities. We got to feel safe in our churches, our homes, in our schools, and that's one of my #1 top priorities, is keeping people safe. The other thing is our senior citizens, our kids, and our disadvantaged I want to protect. A little bit about myself is I've been on various boards and commissions throughout the history of my career, and I'm not going to go into all of them, but currently I serve as the president of the Illinois Chiefs Association, which represents 1,400 law enforcement officials, which are chiefs and deputy chiefs throughout the state. We set the standards for professionalism throughout the state for police chiefs. The other board I serve on is the Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board, which Governor Rauner appointed me bipartisanly to serve on that board because I have a lot of experience in training, and as you'll find out tonight, a trained officer is a good officer. So we set the standards for corrections, police, deputies. Everyone with law enforcement is run through the Law Enforcement and Training Standards Board. I've been through the FBI Academy, I've been through the Secret Service training, and I've been through the DEA training. One of the other things I've done over the last 6 years is I've taught out at ICC North, and I've taught criminal justice to young individuals just like you. I've taught introduction to criminal justice, I've taught investigations, and I've taught dispatching. And the reason I've done all 3 of those is because we had a dispatch center, so I had the experience on how to train dispatchers for the public safety field. One of the things I always encourage people is to vote. I'm going to close it with this. It's very important that you guys get registered, you vote. One of the things I'm most proud of in the voting arena is I've voted in every election since I was 18 years old, okay? And the reason I've done that is because you can make a difference. I've been out walking door to door and talking to people, and a lot of people get frustrated with the election process and the political climate. So we need to get out and vote. Thank you.
Mr. Asbell, I'll give you a heads up at 30 seconds. And
All right.
You said that's fine if it's up here. Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Asbell, and I appreciate this opportunity to meet with you tonight. I feel like you're all looking down on me, though. This room is it's like a vertigo room. I think that's what someone called it, so this is awkward for me. But thank you. Being an informed voter, yes, that is extremely important, and I applaud each and every one of you for being here tonight to listen to both the candidates and who is the best person for this position. Hopefully tonight you understand what the role of sheriff is. Many people don't in our community. They often think that the sheriff is simply the law enforcement officer on the street. And that is part of our job. That's one part of our job. There's 4 main pillars to this job. And it is the police officer, but it's also the warden of the jail. It's also in charge of courthouse security, as well as lastly civil process, serving all orders, warrants, and judgments and things of that nature. So the sheriff has to wear a lot of hats, from correctional health care to mental health to capital projects. I'm different than most. I started in this profession at the age of 22, and I'm the kid that started in the mailroom and worked his way up to CEO in 22 years. I've worn each hat within this agency, and that's why I was appointed unanimously last summer by the Peoria County Board to be the 56th Sheriff of Peoria County. I served in the Army, and after the Army I began my career at the Sheriff's Office. I started as a corrections officer. From there I was a corrections sergeant. From there I was a deputy, a police officer on the street. Then I was a detective up until 2010, and then I was made under sheriff, back in charge of the jail. And that's where I remained from 2010 until 2017. Actually, the jail is the largest thing that we do at the sheriff's office. Where you live right now, if you live on campus, you fall within the jurisdiction of Bradley University Police Department. If you live in the city of Peoria, which the majority of the population of Peoria lives in, you fall under the police protection of the Peoria City Police Department. The sheriff's responsible for the rural, unincorporated areas of Peoria County policing. But the major thing we do is the jail. Anyone that's arrested on Bradley campus, Peoria City, Elmwood, Bartonville, Chillicothe, there's only one jail in Peoria County. So you have to wear a lot of hats, and I've worn each and every one of these hats, and I'm very proud of what I do. I've been to all the schools, I got all the certifications, I've been to Northwestern School of Police Staff and Command. I've worn these hats, and I'm very proud of the department we have. I have a different philosophy, and this will probably be some of our questions tonight, where I differ from my opponent. So I appreciate this opportunity. I want to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight to be an informed voter. Thank you.
Okay, the first question goes to Mr. Asbell.
Okay.
Okay, and it is this. If further budget cuts are needed in the Sheriff's Department, what would be the items you would first eliminate if the budget was reduced by 5%? So in other words, what is the least priority that you're facing? And please be specific. 2 minutes.
We're actually going through a budget cycle right now, and this isn't a hypothetical question, this is a real question. So we are going through a 5% budget reduction, and that's about $800,000. So this is the question, what service do you get rid of? Every service, there's going to be collateral damage. If you put more money into, or if you pull from patrol, you're going to have less officers on the street. Your response time will be impacted. There's days today that we have 5 officers police in Peoria County. And that's hard. There's a lot of square miles in this county. What I would do, though, specifically on this question, if I had to look at one thing that I would try to lower, I want to say a little bit of each. That's what you have to do. You have to balance each of these operations. You have to balance your patrol duties versus your jail duties. There's a lot of laws involved with the correction side. The Illinois jail standards, there's a lot of regulations that you have to follow. There's PREA compliance. So you got to be careful if you pull from the jail staffing, because you could be non-compliance in some of these critical issues which are required. The PREA is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. It's cross-gender watching. So I would have to say across the board, you'd have to look at each of the divisions, the 4 divisions of the Sheriff's Office, and make the cuts where you need to make them. So specifically, one, if you take less on civil process, it's going to affect serving warrants. It's going to affect serving orders of protections. And there's importance to that, to have these orders served immediately. There's importance in evictions. That's a role of the sheriff to do evictions. We're already 5 weeks backed up on these because of staffing issues. All right, thank you.
Mr. Fengel?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the overall budget, look at the overall sheriff's department, and bring the brightest and smartest together to try to figure out, this isn't the sheriff's thing. I've said from day one I'm going to be the people's sheriff, so we're going to work for the people. And what I'll do is work with the county board. The county board is responsible for the sheriff's department's budget. So the sheriff can request this amount of money, but the county board can come back and say you're going to get this amount of money. Public safety and roads are huge right now. Everybody's been driving on the roads. Are they good? Some of them aren't so good. The sheriff's department and public safety is a critical component for this county, and we want to keep the county safe and secure the best we can. So what we need to do is bring everybody together and figure out what do we need to do, how do we need to do it as a group, all right? And we need to look at everything. One of the things I'd like to look at when I get there is how deputies respond to calls. So if you live out in Elmwood, and this will help save some money, is maybe we can have some online reporting of crimes that are your mailbox gets run over. You can get online if you want a deputy fined, but if you want to file a report for your insurance, you can do that. That's going to save time, wear, and tear on everything. So it's what we've got to do is look at it. You've got one set of a big pot of money, and we need to figure out how we can spend it. You can look at it and take it across all divisions, but is that the smart way to do it? I'm going to bring in people to help, all right, because I'm one person, and we need to look at how we can make it better for everyone in Peoria County. And safety should be the first priority because it has a lot of implications for really selling houses and everything else, because people look at what's going on as far as the crime. So the county board has been very good to work with, and they know the priorities and they know how much it takes. Sure, they've cut, but we've got to get everybody together. Thank you.
Okay, you get the next question, so you don't have to sit
Okay.
down. I just got a call from the county board chairman, and there's good news. The economy has picked up, and the sheriff's budget has increased by 5%. Where would you put that money?
Can I get that in writing?
Where did you put that money?
And like I said, what I want to do when I get there is look at everything, okay? I'm going to do a top to a bottom evaluation and find out where the best place to put it is. And I think that's a smart thing to do. Any CEO coming into a company wants to talk to all the employees, wants to figure out what we need to do, and see where we can make it better. There's a lot of divisions so we need to look at what the community's priority. I would even consider putting a community organization together to come in and say, hey, how can we make this better? Because like I've said from day one, I'm going to be the people's sheriff and work for the people. So if people got good ideas, why not listen to that and see if we can move the sheriff's department forward?
Without prejudging, can you give us what your top 2 or 3 priorities might be in 1 minute?
Top priorities. First,
For spending.
For spending.
Right.
What I want to do is look and see where the money's at. And then go from there and find out where we need to put our money and what is the best resources where we need to allocate. Whether it's the courthouse, whether it's patrol, whether it's civil process. I will tell you, we are living in trying times, and what we have to do is look across the country, because this is not going on just here in Peoria County. It's going on all over the country. So there's other programs out there and other sheriff's departments out there that are struggling with the same thing. What I want to do is get those people that have already went through this process, ask them what we need to do. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel, and look and see how we can make it better with the dollars and be more fiscally responsible. Whether it could be cars, downsizing cars. How about having electric cars? How about having propane cars? There's a lot of different things we can go through.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Asbell?
So you're giving me a gift, right? Of 5%?
Absolutely.
5%. Case management. The goal is to go to a case management system. Recidivism is a key word. I've been in this industry now for almost a quarter of a century, and I know family members, generation after generation after generation, that come through the door. I've been attacking the root causations of crime, and those are treatable mental illness, substance abuse disorders, and addressing the socio-economic factors. I'm not a clairvoyant, but I do know this. If we do not invest in these men and women while they're inside these walls at 301 Maxwell Road, which is a jail, they're going to reoffend. So if I would get given 5%, this pot of money, $800,000, I want to invest in case management workers, social workers to work with these individuals when they're leaving custody, to find out if they have housing, to schedule them for their next mental health appointment, to schedule them for their next doctor's appointment or addiction counseling if that's what they need. Giving them the tools they need to thrive, not just live, but to thrive once they're released from custody. The goal is to make productive members of society. We want them to be taxpayers. We want them to have structure in their own family. And that's a gift that wouldn't just help that individual, but it's going to help the next generation. Parents want their children to do better than themselves. So my goal would be, and we're actually working on grant funding right now for just this issue, to have a case management system at the time someone is leaving the facility. That's what I would do with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey Shelley, can I interject for a second?
Mr. McMillan?
Yeah. So I forgot to say one thing. I want to make sure everybody here realizes that it's the college Democrats and the college Republicans that put this thing together. And I think that's really great and speaks well of the way we try to work together here at Bradley. And the other thing I forgot to say is if you have a question that you've actually written on your card, just raise your hand and then somebody will come by. These guys that are standing up will come by and get the questions. And please take the time. Shelley's got a few more questions that he wants to ask, but I want some of the questions to come from you guys in the audience. Thanks.
I'd rather ask your questions, so please scribble them down, write your names, give these boys some exercise. Besides the college Democrats and Republicans, the Institute for Principal Leadership is also sponsoring, so it's a great organization that Brad runs. I think we're back to Mr. Asbell, right? In doing some research on this race in the sheriff's office, I understand that nepotism under then Sheriff McCoy has been raised as an issue. But I got to tell you, my question is, what's wrong with hiring your relatives and friends? Those are the folks who know you best. Those are the people who are most loyal. I'm from Chicago. We always hire our relatives. So explain your thinking on this.
Right now, the county's board is actually going through a nepotism policy, and we support that. There's a perception. There's a perception if you have a large family base working within the agency, I don't care what business it is, that there's a perception of favoritism. So I would say, and your question was, what's wrong with it?
What's your thinking on it?
What's my thinking on it? My thinking is there should be a policy in place. There should be a policy in place that strictly either prohibits or limits nepotism hiring practices. Hiring, the sheriff only has the ability to hire, well, I'll just do it this way. The sheriff does not hire patrol deputies. This goes through an independent commission. It's the merit commission. So they are the ones that actually offer the employment to applicants. The sheriff does have total authority on all the other hires, the non-certified positions. This would be your correctional officers. This would be records. A lot of our medical contracts, those are contracts, so it's another agency that does those hires. But the sheriff does have a lot of authority on hiring. Like I said, the majority of what the sheriff does is the jail, and that does not go through the merit commission. So to answer your question, Shelley, it would be there should be a policy in place, and we'd follow that.
Would you hire a son, daughter, brother, sister, wife, mother, father?
No, I have 2 sons, and one's at ISU, I'm sorry. The other's at ICC. And Honestly, I want them to find their own way. If they did apply for this job, I would push them to go to another agency. I would say, if you want to be a police officer, why don't you test for Peoria City Police Department or Tazewell County? I don't think it's fair to the employee, who would be my kin, or it would be fair to the rest of the department.
Thanks. Mr. Asbell?
Mr. Fengel.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Too many Brians.
Yes, I've said from day one, nepotism shouldn't be at the sheriff's department, and it has been at the sheriff's department. So what I'm going to do is put a policy in place. If the county board or any of the county board members, they're working on it, but what I want to see is it to go through. Here's what happens if you hire your family and your cousins and your uncles. If anybody's looking for a job and you're not related, please apply. But you just can't be fair to your employees, okay? It sets the tone for people that should be qualified and promoted not to apply because they look at it's the good old boy thing. So I will set policies in place. I will not hire my family or friends. I've already told everybody, if you're related to me, don't apply. Go to another agency. My family told my kids, nope, if you want to go get in law enforcement or get in any public service, go somewhere else. I just think to be fair with all the employees is basically don't condone those practices. And I've said it from day one. Promotions, how do you promote family members fairly? How about people that should have been promoted that didn't get promoted because of their name? It's just not right. So I'm for the county board putting the countywide policy in, and if they don't, I will at the sheriff's department.
That was going to be my question. And if the county board's policy is not as tough as you like, you will enact your own policy?
I will do my own policy. I've said from day one, if it doesn't get done, I will do it. Because I want to be fair to all employees.
Okay, great. Mr. Fengel, don't sit down.
Okay.
Unless we're wearing me out. Next question is this. Since murder and crime generally aren't Democratic or Republican, please tell us whether you think electing a sheriff on a partisan ballot is a good or a bad idea. And if you are elected, will you pledge not to hire anyone in your department based on their party affiliation?
Absolutely. So hiring somebody, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you hire, and I will hire, the most qualified and the most smartest people. The sheriff's department, just so you kind of know, has a merit commission that does the hiring. The sheriff really doesn't do the hiring. The merit commission does the hiring. It's like a fire and police commission. They do it, and they establish a list. So what that is so it's fair and equitable for everyone. It's a process you have to go. Democrat, Republican, I'll be right up front with you. The coroner's office and the sheriff's office, the sheriff, should not be a Democrat or a Republican. You should run bipartisan, okay? It should be for the best guy for the job, because think about this. As law enforcement officials, we don't ask you, if you get in trouble, hey, are you a Democrat or a Republican? We just don't do it, okay? So once elected sheriff, I'm going to lobby the legislators and see if we can get a law enacted in Illinois, because I've got a lot of legislative background, to stop that process and make it bipartisan so you don't have to declare whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. So I've tried to talk to legislators about this, and they said, you're going to have a hard route to go. But I told them, I said, if you don't try, you'll never succeed with it. So I am for doing away with Democrat and Republican for the sheriff and the coroner.
Thank you. Mr. Asbell.
Could you repeat the question? I know that there was a second part of that.
Not a problem. Okay, since Murder and other crimes aren't Democrat or Republican. Please tell us what your thinking is about electing a sheriff on a partisan ballot and whether it's a good or a bad idea. One of you gentlemen is running as a Democrat, one's a Republican. I wasn't even sure which. And if you are elected, will you pledge not to hire anyone in your department solely based on their party affiliation?
But that's an excellent question, and I absolutely agree with Chief Fengel on the answer. This is a position that should be nonpartisan. A sheriff, I look at your city council races, those are nonpartisan ballots, and this is the same as the sheriff should be. Because there can be division. It can be division about party. I will say I am probably the most independent person. I am not a politician, and you'll probably figure that out before this night's over. I'm a professional. When I became sheriff, the sheriff does have the ability to appoint at-will positions. And these are usually higher up in the command staff. These are under sheriffs. You have the ability to have 4 under sheriffs under each division. One for the jail, one for patrol, one for court security and civil process, and the chief deputy. I have made 2 promotions since I've been sheriff. One was to backfill my position as jail superintendent. I am the Republican candidate. I promoted a Democrat, a strong Democrat, to replace me as a jail superintendent because she had the ability. And actually, she is the first, and I say she because it's the first female undersheriff in the history of the sheriff's office. It's the first African American female in the history of the sheriff's office to be put in a command position, what I did. The other one was the assistant jail superintendent, same thing. It's the first African American female placed in that position, and she is also a registered Democrat. I look at the best people. I want the best people on the team. I do not want to surround myself with yes men. I want to surround myself with sometimes opposing views, because we're always not going to have the best answer to the questions individually. But as a team, we'll debate these out, and we walk out of these rooms, we will have the best answer. I depend on the team. This is a team. The sheriff, I look at myself as a coach. I'm on the team though. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a 1-minute break. Who's got cards ready and filled out? Raise your hand. I don't see many hands. Oh, we have a card. That's good. Anybody? All right, you have a 1-minute break to write a question with your name. And if you're a Bradley student, oh, very good, excellent. Cards. I knew these guys were going to get some exercise. This should inspire the rest of you, right? You want your 15 seconds in the sun. Anybody else have cards? Okay, we'll go on to my questions till we get to this good stuff. Oh, someone didn't sign their name, but that's okay. Okay, next question. This goes to Mr. Asbell. It is. I have an admission to make, and that's when I covered the Peoria County Board in the 1970s, they talked about metro government and combining the city and county police agencies. So, it is now 40 years later. I know we're getting to this problem, but in your mind, what are the advantages and disadvantages of combining policing agencies? And I'm not talking about fingerprinting, or I'm talking about a total consolidation, not a partial consolidation. Give us your opinion on whether that's a good or a bad idea. Thank you.
Right now, I don't think we have much of an option not to at least discuss this. This has been kicked around the campfire for, I know under Sheriff McCoy when Chief Stedingsgard was the chief of Peoria City Police. And I truly believe, I think us as law enforcement officers can figure out how to do this. But the problem is the 2 horseshoes. It's the city council and county board. Who's going to give up power? Who's going to give up authority? I'll use Clark County, that's the Louisville, Kentucky area, where they went to a metro police department. And what they did in that instance, they created a whole new governing body commission, a new board. This can be done. We are in a time right now where we do not have money. We're doing more with less. Last year I lost 19 positions. The Peoria City Police, I mean, the city has a $6 million shortfall in their budget. They're going to go through the same thing I did at a larger scope just because of the dollar amount. We have to look at ways to be fiscally responsible, and I think consolidation should be on the table. I think there's things we can do right now, just not Peoria City, but like I said, the jail is the most expensive thing that we do at the sheriff's office. What about a regional jail? Let's talk about Tazewell County, Woodford County, and look at options there. I mentioned Peoria earlier. We could have Peoria, we could do this without a capital project. We could have Peoria County house all the male prisoners. We could have Tazewell house all the female prisoners. And we could have Woodford to be an extradition or a transport team. There's ways to save money. Right now, I've got a crime lab. I got 3 officers that are CSI. Peoria City has a team of their guys. I think we can consolidate those immediately. Same thing with investigations. I was a detective for 10 years. They have their detectives, we have our detectives. We're chasing the same people. It makes sense where we could, some of these contracts, not contracts, but some of our underlying departments or investigations units, we could combine those now. All right, thank you.
Yes, this is, I don't know who wrote the question, but very good question. I've been working with this since '05. I've personally been talking with county board members, city officials since '05 on consolidation of government in general. I was also on the Pass Forward Committee, which County Board Chairman Tommy O'Neill appointed me with, and we looked at all different ways. We had 30, 40 people on this committee, the brightest in the area, to try to figure out street department. How can we combine street departments? How can we combine dispatch centers? How can we combine law enforcement? It can be done, and I'm for it, because if you look at everybody's budget, I've talked to police chiefs from Metropolis all the way up to Chicago, and I hear the same thing: budget, budget, budget. And I really don't see any light at the end of the tunnel with these budgets because of the tax base, people shopping online, and the brick and mortar stores are losing a lot of money in that tax money. That tax money is what funds public safety. So I'm for looking at metro policing. It can be done. I've got a file this thick on it, and there's a bunch of different ways you can put it in play, all right? It can be done, but it takes somebody to get everybody to the table and say, hey, leave your egos at the door, all right? We're going to sit here and figure out how we're going to do this for everybody. Squad cars, uniforms, everything. It can be done. It's going to take a phase-in period to do it. And I would like to keep the discussion going in this county and get people together at the table and have reasonable conversations
What's
about
the
it.
biggest hurdle to it right now?
The biggest hurdle would be getting elected officials from all different municipalities in this county to sit down and say, how can we do this?
Turf.
Turf, power. People don't want to let go.
Would you agree with that, Mr. Asbell?
Hell, you've got collective bargaining agreements. There's a lot of things you have to work through here. There's different unions. It does have a lot to do with power. That's why I said the 2 horseshoes are the biggest problem. But if you could start a whole new commission, a governing body, it could be done. It needs to be done. At least looked
Okay,
at.
next question comes from Alex Fosberg. Who's a student? Alex, can you raise your hand? Hi, Alex. Thanks for being the first student questioner. You're going to inspire all the rest of these people to ask a question. And it goes to Mr. Fengel. And it is, what are your first steps in preventing the opioid crisis in Peoria?
That's a very good question. It's huge. I'm sure everybody has a family member or a friend that's been through this. Real quick, that one of the reasons let me sit back up here. So just so you guys got to understand, it is a crisis. Last year, 60 people have died over it. And in Bartonville, what I did is we were the first agency to use Narcan. And I'll tell you why we were the first agency, because I got dispatched to a call and there was a young individual laying in a parking lot dying. and there was nothing I could do to save her because we weren't carrying Narcan at the time. So I worked with Dr. Alt, and we got those in the squad cars. So first responder, who is the first to respond to these calls? The police. So we need them. The other thing I've proposed and that we're going to put in play is the Safe Passages program. Does anybody know what Safe Passages is? Google it after we're done, and then we'll kind of know. It is trying to help people on the upfront that are non-criminal, low-level offenders, that aren't bad people, that have struggled through addiction, okay? It is terrible to see somebody suffer like that. And the problem is, law enforcement, we don't need to take those people to jail. We don't need to put them in jail, all right? They're no threat to our community. They have an addiction, a mental health issue, and we need to try to figure out how we can fix it. So Safe Passages, that's what I'm going to put in place to try to help the people when they fall into that crisis. And it is an epidemic. The other twofold to that is the people bringing it into the community. It's all coming out of Chicago down to Peoria and then dispersed out into all our communities. There's no one immune from this stuff. And anytime you play with that stuff on the street, with the fentanyl, carfentanil, your chances of living are about this good, all right? It's real.
Mr. Asbell.
Question specifically how to prevent it, or we have.
What are your first steps in preventing the opioid crisis?
Well, we've already passed that 'cause it's already a crisis. We can't prevent it. It's already here. We have to look at this as a health crisis versus a criminal justice crisis. But here's my argument. What about people addicted to benzos? What about people addicted to cocaine, alcohol? There's a lot of other addictions out there. Right now we're concentrating on the opiates because that is what we hear about the most, and that is the current crisis. But I have just as many people in that jail going through other type of withdrawals. So I don't think it's fair to say, hey, we're going to do this, treat the opiate crisis as a health issue, but I'm still going to treat crack cocaine and treat that by a criminal justice or a lock 'em up mentality. I think we need to look at all these addictions as a health crisis, not specifically the opiate. What we're doing now is working on a MAT treatment program. It's a medical assisted treatment while they're in custody. While they're in, to get them, it's Vivitrol, it's a shot. We're going to do this through the Gateway Foundation. This shot blocks the inhibitors so they don't feel the high. This great thing about this, it also works for alcohol. So we can help those that are addicted to alcohol as well. But my thing is, in the 80s and the 90s, how did we deal with addictions? We locked them up. And it has a lot of the problems we have in our society today because a lot of it was because of the color of someone's skin. We locked them up. We need to look at all these addictions the same way, just not the opiate epidemic. But good question, but thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have cards? Raise your hand. These gentlemen would love to run the stairs. Questions? Okay, you're leaving no choice. This question is from Dick Van Norman. He's definitely not a student, but will be an equal opportunity question. And it's this. When he was a kid, and I was a young journalist, the sheriff's office in the county jail was about twice the size of this room. I was there in the Hamilton Street facility. Now the office in the jail is located on a site that looks like it's got a lot of area. So the question is this: how do we make sure that the next generation, we're not building another jail that's twice the size as this jail? And are there any ideas to get assistance from other agencies, federal government or elsewhere? Mr. Asbell, you go first.
I'd like to hear your story while you're at the whole Hamilton jail, but that's for something else. Well, yes, the old jail where the parking deck across from Peoria County is, that was where the old jail was. And in 1985, they built the jail out of Peoria County, where it's currently out by the airport. Capacity right now is 492 beds, and there's two 16-man dorms. We used to run a work release center. When I took over as jail superintendent I was challenged with saving money. It opened my eyes to the whole causations of crime. We've lowered that jail population right now by 40%. And it's not just because of the programs we put in place. There's a lot of factors, but we have put a lot of our programs based on reentry. I've always said my job was to close the jail down as jail superintendent. That should be my #1 priority, finding ways to stop people from coming in. We live in a country of mass incarceration. 2.3 million people are locked up in our jails and prisons. It is a multi-billion, if not trillion-dollar-a-year industry. It is an industry. There's lobbyists involved with here that keep these laws in place. So my goal has, and what I have been doing, is to work on the root causations of crime. Again, if we don't, if you build it, they will come. They will come back. And we'll fill these up to keep the machine going. So my goal and what I have been working on is addressing the root issues of crime. Going back to socioeconomic factors. Finding employment for these men and women. Give them dignity. Give them a chance of hope and a feeling of hope. And I think truly we're just not affecting, again, this generation, but future generations. So that's how I would work on this, attack the root issues of crime.
Thank you. Mr. Fengel.
Yeah, in the late 80s, early 90s, we went crazy building prisons. Illinois had a lot of prisons being built here in Illinois. Mass incarceration, we found out not only building them, millions and millions and millions of dollars here in Illinois. We found out that putting everybody in jail wasn't the best idea, okay? I call them crime colleges, okay? And made people worse while they were in there, and then when they got out, they took that behavior out. So what we have to do is, the jail population has went down, and what I want to do is look at, if we have room, maybe having a mental health facility at the jail so they can get the help that they need. And if there's not space there, use it for that. The other thing is to be resourceful. The jail right now, the federal marshals and the federal penitentiaries do house prisoners at the jail. And I've been told that, there's other jails throughout the state, that bid for these numbers to get people in there to help generate revenue. So what I want to look at is work with the federal partners and find out what they're actually paying, what we need to do to make those spots available. If people are taking prisoners to Knox County, Tazewell County that are federal, why not bring that money here and use it that way? Mass incarceration has happened, but I will tell you, we will always have a jail. We'll never close a jail, because I will tell you, there's bad people out there doing bad things, and the jail should be set up for bad guys doing crimes against people. So that's what I've got. Yep.
I want to, before I get to the next student question, this goes to Mr. Fengel, I want to build off something that Mr. Asbell said, which is closing the work release center. I remember the work release center. I'm not sure if it was effective. I'll let you make that judgment. But I guess the question is it wise to consider opening that, and whether it's in the current facility or a new facility? I know there was a state work release center downtown. Is there value in doing that kind of halfway house type of deal so that you're not either in or out? And I guess I'm wondering why it was closed. Why don't we go to Mr. Fengel first?
It was closed several years ago, and it was due to budget budget crisis with the state. I mean, they closed Zeller Mental Health Facility, they closed the Bartonville State Hospital a long time ago. There needs to be some work release, and it needs to be looked at, because what it does is it gives back to the community. Some people that made a bad mistake, and it's not a serious crime, and they want to get out and work and give back to the community. We need to look at that. I thought out there at the Department of Corrections, I thought that was a wonderful concept because they would help other communities. And the best thing to do is give people some hope. The number one problem that we have is jobs. If we've got people jobs and good paying jobs and people are busy, they're less likely to go to jail, and that's what we need is good paying jobs here in the area so people have some hope. Whether it's training them, okay, in jail. I've got a bunch of different programs that I want to look at with the jail facility. But I guess to answer your question, yes, I would like to see something like that in this area to expound on it, or what we've got is make it better. Because I think if you work all day and you feel like you've accomplished something, you're going to be able to function better when you get out into the community. But the number one problem we have is jobs, and we need good paying jobs for people.
Thank you. You brought this up, I'm glad you did.
The work release center at the sheriff's work release center wasn't closed over budgets. I was actually the person to close it down. It was lack of participation. We were having this is a 24-hour day operation, so the FTE count couldn't justify keeping it open. We were having between 6 to 7 work release residents there who were gone to their jobs 8 to 12 to 16 hours a day, but I still had to man that area, even if there was one person. It wasn't fiscally responsible to have a full-time employee for 5 or 6 people, especially at this time, is when the jail had a population of between 500 and 600 people. We needed those actually in housing units. So we closed this down. But in saying that, we still need sentencing alternatives. For example, those that have jobs, we never want to take someone's employment away for them after a conviction for incarceration. So we have weekender programs where their weekend might be a Tuesday, Wednesday, or it's the traditional Saturday, Sunday, so they can remain employed. Goes back to the causations of crime. If we take their employment away from them, my crystal ball will say they'll end up back in jail again. Currently, we're working on other sentencing alternatives around that same theory of the work release center. My staff project up at Northwestern was to create what I call a SWAP program, Sheriff's Work Assistance Program, SWAP. This would be for nonviolent convicted offenders to be sentenced to this program versus incarceration. What this program would be sentenced, instead of sentencing someone to 10 days in jail, they'd be sentenced to 10 8-hour work days where they work specifically for the sheriff's office, where we could lower other costs. For example, we could be mowing the grass at the county campuses. We could be doing graffiti removal around Peoria. We could be shoveling snow in elderly's driveways or sidewalks in the winter. It's a sense of retribution. There's always, what do you base punishment on? Incapacitation, retribution, deterrence. I think it fits all those models by having this work program. Again, it would be for nonviolent offenders.
So if the problem before was with lack of participation, I think that means judges weren't sentencing enough folks to work release. And so I guess the question is, should the sheriff, whoever it is, work with judges to do that? To sentence them to that? To encourage them? To educate them about that?
Your judges, your public defender, your state's attorney, your private attorneys, they're all looking for alternatives. Assembly line justice, you're looking for plea bargains to get these cases through. If they have an alternative sentence in the SWAP program, the chief judge, he is 100% behind this, the state's attorney and the public defender. All three of them are, I've submitted what I want to do, and they're excited about that, to give them this option. And again, here's the great thing. You're not paying the cost of incarceration. You come out, you do your 8-hour shift, you go back home. We don't want to break these families up. We want them back home and have structure at home. You're not paying the $80 a day cost of incarceration. They're going back home and then coming out and do their sentence.
Last question before we get to the rebuttals, and this is from Tommy Bowers. Did I butcher your name, Tommy?
No, it's Bowers.
Bowers, okay. And I think you're a student.
I am a student, yes.
Where are you from, Tommy?
I actually live in Kickapoo, Illinois.
Okay, that sounds close. And I think this question goes to Mr. Asbell. It is, as a future teacher, an honorable profession, I might add. What can you do as sheriff to make schools safer?
Well, if I had the full-time employees, I'd want a school resource officer in every school we have. And it's not just to have that gun on the hip, it's about relationships. Since being sheriff in this last year, one of our major schools, Dunlap School District, it's one of the largest school districts in Peoria County. We've increased our school resource officers from 1 full-time to 3 full-time. So now I have 1 specifically for the high school, 1 for the middle schools, and 1 for the grade schools. It's so much about building these relationships. I also advocate when I talk to school districts to get more social workers or mental health counselors in the school, because again, it's about preventing these problems from starting. I don't think we would have Parkland or other of these terrible situations in our country if we had relationships. See something, say something. That's the motto. Right now, school districts are just as broke as the sheriff's office. There's not money for these resources. So what I have done, I've gone to the other school districts in Peoria County, Princeville, Brimfield, Elmwood, to see if they'd like to invest collectively for a school resource officer, where this officer could go to Brimfield 1 day a week, or Princeville, or Elmwood. Again, it's about building those relationships. So school safety is a priority. If I could put a school officer in each of these schools, I would. The other thing that we've been pushing and advocating, where do you have your lunch at? Go to the schools and have your lunch. When you have to sit and write reports, sit in front of a school and write the report. The schools have given us office space in all their buildings. They want to see that car out front. There's a sense of security if you see the red and blues out front. And we've been advocating, and our first shift officers are taking advantage of the free lunch program. So that's what we'll continue to advocate. We're trying to do more with less, but we're thinking outside the box too. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fengel.
Yeah, I'm all for school security. I'm in the jurisdiction of Limestone. We've had a school resource officer up there for a number of years. I don't know how many total, 10 maybe. And it is something, who would ever thought 30 years ago, 35 years ago, that you would have a policeman in your school? But society has dictated this so everybody can be safe and secure. And I think I said that from the very beginning. What I'll do is look for federal grants to see if there's any grants out there for school resource officers. One of the things, you have to have a buy-in with all the school districts, getting everybody sat down at the table and say, hey, this is a priority. I mean, this is a priority for school districts to get somebody in there that has the ability to do something. When the last school shooting happened, I talked to some superintendents, I talked to teachers, and we had some dialogue about, should teachers be armed or should superintendents be armed? And what I found is, they don't feel comfortable with that concept, but they do feel comfortable with law enforcement who are trained to know when to use deadly force. So, yes, I would advocate for federal grants to go out and search. And I will talk to every school district and find out how we can make it happen. And most of them will pay the freight if they've got the money to do it. Yes.
Thank you. I said that was the last question, but I just got one from, so if you give me, I'm going to give you guys 1 minute to answer this. Adrian McDevitt. He's from Iowa, but we'll let him ask this question anyway. It is this. Have you considered, or what's the pros and cons of privatizing, I think he means the jail, not the police force, but privatizing the jail, and is it possible that the county could save money if that was the case?
That's a very good question. I haven't looked into it. If privatizing works, I would have to go and see what's worked around the country. I know some of the jails are, and some of the corrections facilities. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing without researching it and knowing for sure.
Well, I was also, like, you guys were talking about, like mental health, how to help people get back on their feet. I was wondering if you could just, like, let that be done by private charities, community, instead of
Yeah.
spending money. Let them try to do that first before the state steps in, or you could like work with them, like send people that you get that have like an opiate, like let's say like an opiate problem, and then you can point them to certain charities or private organizations.
Okay, let's let.
Yeah, no, that's, mental health and substance abuse is huge. I mean, if you look at the numbers that come into jail, that is a key factor. So what I would do is research it, all right, and find out if it's feasible. It's like anything else, like dispatching. Could you privatize dispatching? Could you make it better? It's something that we need to look at down the road here and see if it would work. But to answer your question, I would rather research it to find out if it's a good thing, a bad thing. I know it's been talked about quite a bit.
Okay. Mr. Asbell.
The state statute will not allow it in Illinois. You're not allowed to privatize your jails or prisons. The reason I know that because the Tazewell County Sheriff looked into this about 5 years ago, and there was a lot of talk, and their research said it's not allowed in Illinois. There's only about 3 or 4 states that have provisions that allow that. But go back to your question, that more of that holistic approach to running your jails, absolutely. Last year we started a Criminal Justice Behavior Health Review Committee, and we have a lot of community stakeholders. We've got Peoria City, Peoria County, Human Service Center, both hospitals, OSF and Unity Point sent to the table, Southside Office of Concern. And what we did, we looked at who are the high utilizers of all of our systems. Who's touching the hospitals? Who's being admitted to the hospital? Who is AMT transporting the most? Who's the Human Service Center touching? Who are we touching at the jail? Meaning they're coming into our system. We whittled down to our top 100 utilizers in their community. We took it down even farther. We took it down to the top 19. These top 19 cost our community last year, 2017, $3.2 million. So it makes sense to be more on the prevention model and working to prevent these people from going to jail. Again, going back to one of the earlier questions, I talked about case management. I do think that's the key to this, to have no different than we run our hospitals with the case management system. When you leave, you have all these papers. This is where your next appointment is. We need to run our jails and prisons the same way. Re-entry is the key to get people back on their feet. We're given life sentence after convictions. I say that because you have that stigma, that F scarlet letter on your forehead, which means felon, and it restricts you from employment. And employers put these people at the bottom of the pile. So my job as sheriff is to change the community's attitude, their attitude about hiring these men and women.
Thank you. Okay, so since I said that was the last question, I got 2 more questions. But they're the same question. So if you'll bear with us, this will go to you, Mr. Asbell.
Okay.
Are there body cameras in Peoria County?
Not yet.
Okay, so that's the question. These are by Robert Schmid. Where are you from, Robert?
From Darien.
Darien, south suburb, by my mother. And how about Tyler
Sure.
Sherg? Sherg.
Sure. Are you sure about that?
Okay, I'm sure that was a strange spelling. Okay, so the question, I think, if I can synthesize these, should there be body cameras? Are you for or against them? And most importantly, where's the money come from?
Yes. Yes. Transparency. I began today talking about we're at a divide in our country between police and the community. Transparency and public trust is the priority for any law enforcement. And I don't care if we're working on the opiate epidemic or if we're working on gang violence. The first thing we have to do is build public trust. And that's what I did from day one, is to work on public trust. This is a tool to help us with that. We have an order in right now. We had 65 cameras that we've ordered the hardware. The problem with the county was storage solutions. You just don't put these body BWCs in place and say, oh, there you go. We have take-home cars. So this was a dilemma with take-home cars. How am I going to pull someone off the street? We're already short on the street. Some days we're doing with 5 guys working the whole entire county. Do I pull them off an hour a day to do a download of their body-worn cameras? So we had to find solutions to this. So what we've done is put some different hot spots around the county to link it to our servers. A lot of the body-worn camera platforms are cloud-based storage. We decided collectively we're not doing this, and we're doing this with 4 departments. It was a grant that's funding this. So to answer the question, do we want these? Yes. When I started, that's when we first started getting in-car cameras. If you're doing your job right, this is your best friend. And if I, as an employer, have someone that's not doing their job right, I want to know that too. That's how you build public trust. So I am huge about having transparency, and this is a tool for that. And they're coming. We should have them. We'll have the hardware in hand here actually in about another week. We have to do some testing, and then there's going to be a lot of training to go along with this.
Thank you.
Yes, I'm for body cams and public trust. I mean, what body cams do, it's a tool. Is it a fix-all for law enforcement? No. But it's a very good tool to use for the community. And it does bring back public trust. It holds the police accountable for their actions, okay? And it protects the citizens that we serve. And we've been using body cams since 2016. We got a grant that purchased some of these body cams, and we've got them deployed. They work very good. They're high definition. We've been using cameras in squad cars since the 1990s. I don't want to date myself, but when I started, I had VHS tapes, and a lot of you may not even know what that is. So we've been using in-car cameras. The body cam is a tool. I worked with Representative Jihan Gordon, Senator Kwame Raoul on this justice reform and trying to get this legislation through. It was not easy trying to get the body cams and some legislation that would be workable, and so departments could put that in place to get that. The other thing I said I was on is the Law Enforcement Training Standards Board, and what that is who governs the body cams, sets the policies, model policies for this. But let's face it, every police agency in this country will eventually have body cams. It is just a fact of it, and the community trust is behind it. So I am for it, have been for it, we've been using them, so that's where I'm at.
Great, thank you. Okay, that's all for the questions. Now we're going to have a 2-minute wrap-up.
Hey, thank you.
I think, Mr. Asbell, since you went first for the opening, why don't you go first for the wrap-up, and you have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Thank you all for attending. Being an informed voter, like I said, is very important. Elections have consequences. They do. I'm different. I'm different than most police officers or police executives you've ever seen. I concentrated on the root causations of crime, and I think that's truly being a true crime fighter. If not, we see where we are in our country today. We are at a crossroads, ladies and gentlemen. We are at a crossroads in our community, just not here, our state, our nation, with public trust. And that should be a priority. This week, I was endorsed by the Black Justice Project. And this is a part of the Black Lives Matters group, who does not get involved in elections, but especially sheriff's election. I think that speaks volumes from they see what I've done. And this hasn't just been in this last year. These are programs that I started back in 2010 when I saw looking at the problems of recidivism. I've also been endorsed unanimously by my FOP, my police officers. I'm one of them. I started in the mailroom, I worked my way up, they respect me, it's about leadership. We are doing a lot of wonderful things at Peoria County. We're looking at this criminal justice model through a different lens, and it's time, we have to. There's so much bias in the system, and I'm trying to break those biases. I'm about giving people second chances, and it's working. These reentry programs, the mental health programs, all these things we are doing are having a positive impact on our community, and we're just getting started. So I appreciate your opportunity tonight. I'm honored to be your current sheriff, and I ask for your vote in November 6th to remain your sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone that showed up. I know you guys took the time out of your schedules to at least come and listen to us. This is an important race. I'd also like to thank Bradley for hosting this and getting our message out. Like I said, it is very important that you vote. Don't get discouraged with the voting process, okay? Every vote counts. It truly does. And I've knocked on a lot of doors, talked to a lot of people throughout Peoria County. And with the political climate, people are getting frustrated. I don't want to go vote. Well, why don't you want to go vote? They watch everything on TV, but please, that is critical that you go vote locally. One of the things, I've been in law enforcement for 30 years. I've been in Bartonville for 28 years, and I've been the police chief for 21 years. I've got a wide variety of experience. I've worked with Democrats, I've worked with Republicans over the years on justice reform, working on laws that keep us safe in our communities. And that's one of the things I said as sheriff is my priority, keeping us safe in our communities, all right? That's the one thing I stand for. And one of the other things I want to do is bring everybody to the table in law enforcement and get everybody on the same page and everybody working together. The sheriff is the top law enforcement official, and we have to act that way. So I want to bring people together, making it better for our communities, safer for our kids. And I've been to the FBI Academy, I've been to the Drug Enforcement Administration, I've been to the Secret Service training. And most importantly, I've worked bipartisanly. And I will, when elected sheriff, try to get a law in place that gets rid of the Democrat and Republican thing as a sheriff and a coroner. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it. And I'm asking you for all your votes. Thank you.
Let's give these two gentlemen a round of applause. And a round for Brad McMillan and the Institute. I'll echo, please go vote a couple Tuesdays from now or tomorrow, because early voting has begun.
It is.
Thank you. Be safe.
Thanks, Shelley.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great fun. You guys did
Very good at this.